Hello, UX and Data. Good evening. I'm really happy to see you all here tonight for our first time podcast conversation and taping with our special guests, the CEO and founder of Meetup, ScottHeiferman, and the Deciding by Data podcast. Is anybody here for the first time tonight? Wow, it's great to see so many new faces. So thank you for joining our community. I hope that each one of you will find somebody new to meet tonight and get some really good insights from tonight's conversation. So I am MeetMoi. I'm one of the organizers of UX and Data. I'm a product designer at Capital One, and I also teach at Columbia with Matthew Weber, who's one of our co-organizers. I think he's somewhere back there. Matt is the VP of Product at Development Guild, which is a consulting firm for philanthropies. We also have Bill Prickett in the back there. Bill is our video expert and records all of our events and posts them online. So if you ever can't make it to one, you can catch it there later on. We also want to take a moment to thank our sponsors. So thank you to Workbench for providing us with this wonderful space. And Allie here is going to tell you a little bit more about it.
Ooh, hello, everybody. Welcome. Welcome to Workbench. Thank you. There is such a full house tonight. This is so awesome. So obviously, some of you are very new to UX and Data Meetup. Who's been to Workbench before? Okay, so a handful of you. Welcome back. To everyone else, Workbench is an enterprise technology venture fund and community here in New York City. We have a passion for bringing together what we call the suits and the hoodies, our corporates and our startups. So if you are either one of those, please talk to us. We'd love to have you back here at a UX and Data Meetup or one of the 200 plus events that we host a year here. So thank you so much, Kim, and everyone enjoy tonight's conversation.
Thanks, Allie. I also want to thank the Creative Group. They're a professional staffing agency, and they provide us with all the great food and drinks to enjoy, and we really love that. So thank you to them as well. Thank you to Indicative for sponsoring this very special evening and helping us to organize this. Indicative is the leading behavioral analytics company founded by the hosts Jeremy Levy and Andrew Weinrich, and you'll hear more from them in just a moment. Their platform enables product and marketing teams to easily analyze their company's data to understand the full customer journey. And now I'm going to hand it off to Lauren Feiner from Indicative to introduce our guests for the evening. Lauren?
Thanks, Kim. I'm Lauren Feiner. I'm the producer of the Deciding by Data podcast. And thank you, all of you, for coming out today. We're really excited to have you here for our first live event for the podcast. So for those of you who aren't subscribers yet, and we hope you will be after this event, there are QR codes all around that will lead you right to the subscribe page. The podcast features forward-thinking conversations with business leaders on how data is driving their industries. Our hosts, Jeremy Levy and Andrew Weinrich, will be leading the conversation today. They're the co-founders of the behavioral analytics SaaS company Indicative, where Jeremy is the CEO and Andrew is the chairman. Jeremy and Andrew are serial entrepreneurs who have co-founded 2 companies together before Indicative. In 2006, they started MeetMoi, a pioneering location-based dating service for mobile, which sold to Match.com in December 2014. In 2008, they co-founded Xtify, the mobile-based CRM that sold to IBM in October 2014. Our guest tonight, as you all know, is ScottHeiferman, the co-founder and CEO of Meetup. At the end of 2017, Meetup became a part of WeWork, the world's leading IRL, or in real life, community company. Scott started Meetup, his 3rd successful company on the internet, after seeing the potential for community renewal around the tragedies of 9/11. Now over 30 million people are members of Meetup communities in cities everywhere. And just so everyone knows, this is also being live streamed on Propelify's Facebook page. Thank you to Propelify. And after the interview, you'll all have a chance to ask Scott questions. So now I'll turn it over to our hosts.
Scott, are you mic'd?
Hey, no, but
Oh, I think there's a mic here for you.
oh, there's a mic.
Okay, thank you everyone for coming. And Scott, thanks for doing this.
Sure.
So here's the format. I thought we'd talk a little bit about you. I've known Scott for 20 years. Actually, longer than I've known you, Jeremy. Wow. So I thought we'd talk a little bit about your background, what you've done. And then we're going to dive into the two topics I think that are most relevant to this group, which is user interface, user experience, and data and Scott's learnings. And then we'll talk about WeWork and where Meetup fits in that vision. So I think we met when you were running iTraffic.
Ancient history.
Yeah, but I think it'd be interesting for this group to hear a little bit about the ancient history. iTraffic was media buying, and you also did site design. Did you?
Well, no, none of that. But I mean, this is '90s. This is so I started. What was the first online ad agency back in 94, 95? I'm an old man, and So we'll get to your history later. But yeah, that's there weren't many people working in internet technology kind of stuff back then, and so we were.
But my favorite thing is you sold the company, and then there's this picture of you, which I've shared with a number of people and actually looked up prior to tonight, of you wearing a McDonald's hat and working at McDonald's. That's it. Quiet. The reason I bring it up is because I remember you talking about, and one of the things we're talking about here is user experience. The reason I bring it up is I remember you talking about, here you were this successful entrepreneur, and you wanted to get closer to the customer. And so there aren't a lot of internet executives who take a job flipping burgers at McDonald's.
Yeah. So I started this what was an online media buying agency before, there really was much such a thing. Not unlike, I mean, I have to get this out sooner just so everyone has some context here. Andrew, absolutely bona fide, for real, like, is the inventor of social networking, like of the model, which like we kind of all take for granted as being like Facebook always existed. But he literally invented, from a product and design and model standpoint, that. So just I got to get that out fast, so you know what the deal is here. Anyway, which is a story for today or some other day or I don't know what, but you've got to hear the story. Anyway, yeah. So I stumbled into building this. I hated advertising, and I thought, the internet. This is so ancient history crap. Don't let me spend more than 30 seconds talking about this. But the long story short is you started something and it took off, and there was like 100 people in the company, and I was 26, 27, and I was not a good manager at that point, and so basically this company became part of agency.com, which became part of Omnicom. But yes, I hated advertising. I hated it so much. I couldn't wait to get out of this industry. And so as soon as I was out the door, I fell into a weird depression or something where I just felt I was hanging out with too many investment bankers and lawyers and
you were hanging out with me.
And I was like, I need to, I grew up, I grew up in Illinois, went to school in Iowa, I grew up in my family's paint store. I felt like I needed to reconnect with the real world as opposed to this kind of crazy 90s internet crap. And so I literally got a job at the McDonald's at 4th and Broadway, worked the counter. I did fill out on my application when it said, where have you worked? I said, well, I'm currently the chairman of a public company. And the guy looked at me and said, chairman of a part of a public company, where he looked at me and said, what's this? I'm like, it's whatever, it's a thing. And he's like, okay, what's your pant size? So, but the point is that, maybe this is relevant I think I know. I'm so curious about who's here and what you're interested in and why you're here, what brings you to UX and data. But for me, it was like this disconnection. You know, you're in this BS advertising world, and it's all just a bunch of, you know, bits and numbers, and you don't know. I felt like I needed to be close to the customer. I needed to be close. I needed to have a sense of like real people and the real world. And so, you know, serving people fries and burgers was a way to kind of like reconnect with real customers. I mean, the fact that people were obsessed with the dollar menu, you know, and that it was really important to them to, you know, get to what the dollar menu represented. It's like, that's, if you're a person trying to make stuff for the world, and you gotta connect somehow.
So, and your cover was blown when you appeared on the cover of Cranes.
Yeah.
There's a great picture, you should all Google it, of literally Scott on the cover of Cranes after he sold his company wearing a McDonald's uniform. Tell us how you got from there. Then there was Photolog, but tell us how you got from there to the inspiration behind Meetup.
Yeah, so I mean, the long story short is that I was working. I was at the McDonald's on 4th and Broadway. I was living in an apartment at Houston and Houston and Elizabeth Street, you know, Nolita, and woke up one Tuesday morning. This is, you know, back to in 2001 in September, and heard the news that a plane went into a building. So I went to the roof. And so just after that second plane hit, you're just standing there and you say, oh my God, what's happening? And over the course of the next, you know, minutes and hours, more and more of my neighbors on this tall apartment building found their way to the roof to just, you know, check in with what's happening as the towers went down. And I found myself basically talking to my neighbors in New York City for the first time.
I'm sorry,
yeah.
go ahead. No, but there was decidedly this vision that we needed to congregate offline after.
Yeah. I'm sorry to make it the long story, but basically the simple idea of so I found myself, you know, connected to my neighbors and talking to my neighbors, and simply, I mean, do you say hello to your neighbors in your apartment elevator, you know, or is it like kind of a just back then there wasn't. Here's Grandpa telling the stories of when there's no phones, but, you know, like, you know, just do you avoid eye contact, or do you? And so you can say, well, who cares if neighbors say hello to each other in the elevator? But what I just kind of became obsessed with was, wow, what happens when there is actual real community and people are looking out for you and looking after you, even if it's just a matter of like, you know, people saying hello to each other in the elevator. The fact is that that is a social infrastructure and social support network to have real local community. Anyway, so that led to, you know, gathering 5 people in a room, renting a room at Lafayette and Spring, and having a design goal, which is how can we use the internet to get people off the internet.
So what was the first meetup?
The very first meetups were the short answer is.
What was the first successful meetup?
Yeah, no, there was anyone remember something called Slashdot? Any like old school nerds here? There's it's like pre-Hacker News, pre-Reddit. You know, basically there was a community that said, this is what always happens in online communities. People say, you know, from forever ago to today, you know, people find something, find some soul in an online community, and then they say, hey, anyone here in Chicago, anyone here in Paris, anyone here in Shanghai, and people, you know, step up and say, yeah, let's meet up. And so anyway, it was Slashdot that, you know, the day we launched, 3 months after, you know, we set ourselves up in that room, where Slashdot said, hey, let's use this thing to organize Slashdot meetups all over the world, and they organized 700 of them.
Wow. So, you know, let's talk a little bit about user design. And one of the analogs that I think is one of the themes that I want to focus on is user design for the offline and user design for the online, because we don't really talk about user design for the offline. But let's start with the offline. did you have to think through what's the format of these meetups? Did you have to think through what you expected from organizers?
You know, I didn't set you up with that question, but I love that question. And when we, Meetup, we're Meetup's 200 people at Broadway and Bleecker, Broadway and Houston. I realize all I'm giving you is like various intersections of New York City. We can talk about it. Anyone want to call out an intersection? Let's talk about it. Anyway, so we're mostly design, engineering, data, product, and when we're trying to hire the best of the best, and I say we are designing an online and offline experience. I'm sure you've all been to a meetup that was horrible, and that we are liable for that. Not legally, but the thinking of design, and then thinking about the data around it being not just a digital online thing. Just because you RSVP, that doesn't mean that the experience is a good one. I mean, it's not unlike Airbnb, not unlike other things where you have to think about the full experience.
But let's talk about the design of this meetup. I mean, there are three of us sitting on stage. There was an introduction. Everyone is wearing a name tag with your logo on it.
Old logo. That's
your old logo. We've got something to show you about your new logo, but that'll come up later. But how much do you have an influence in the introduction, the fact that this is going to take an hour, the fact that there's Q&A? I mean, how heavy-handed or...
There's it's so important to pay attention to the shifts in, the sort of the eras of where we are in terms of making great product, making great businesses, great design. Our whole thesis was, if we just get people in a room together, they'll figure it out. And so for a decade plus, it is literally like, like any company or startup, whatever, you gotta prioritize. So for us, it was just to say, can we make magic out of nothing here and rev up this network to have, now it's 40 million people, but we thought our responsibility stopped at just get people in the right time and place. If we can get people who have that shared interest, together, bring people, our mission is bring people together in real life to create community, then the magic will happen and we don't have to get involved. And that was in contrast to people having conferences and stuff, which was this heavy, this kind of very heavyweight thing. That being said, I totally regret not taking more seriously earlier.
Not curating more.
Certainly, the Meetup is going to be totally different 2, 3, 4 years from now than it is today. We are blowing everything up. On one dimension, it's that it's like the difference between Craigslist and Airbnb, for renting a place. It's like Craigslist will just be this hodgepodge of crap, and Meetup has a lot of crap, and we are barreling hard towards being certainly a curated quality. That doesn't mean it's just people, some people on high are deciding what's quality. It's making the right reputation systems in place, the right data.
But I would think you've got the perfect data already to do that. I go to Aaron Price's Meetup, and he has this thing in the beginning, which I thought was fairly clever. People stand up and they say, anyone that wants to ask a question says one thing that they can do for other people before they ask for one thing back. And I would imagine that if you looked out at all the meetups and all of the different icebreakers, introductions, you could create this perfect user experience.
Yeah, that's a beautiful that's a beautiful thing. The thing here, let me ask y'all a question here. What do you think the average meetup size is? Even if you take away the meetups with only one or two, kind of the non-meetup meetups.
How much? 15.
What's that? 15. Any other guesses?
6.
Interesting. Okay, so I expected y'all to go much higher. The fact is, you're right. It's somewhere between 6 and 15, almost exactly. So the crowd works here. But no. I mean, a lot of people who go to meetups like this, they think Meetup is these, 50, 100 200 person, sort of tech meetups in New York City. No. The bread and butter of Meetup, the bread and butter Meetup is your like 9-person feminist book club meetup in St. Louis. So it's and so in that
sitting
case,
across from the conservative Trump meetup directly across
whatever. Well, nowadays you have to actually think about how your platforms are being used. Where again, it actually interesting. What did I say 2 minutes ago? It's like there was this era which is just like don't take responsibility for the quality on the platform, just like because hey, this is the internet and your job is like no one's regulating what is under the HTTP. It's like, but anyway, that's a different topic. But but I love this question of the name tags and the cadence and the spirit of welcoming and the true question of do people feel is the inclusion right? Do people what are people's actual experience? If one of you just kind of shows up here and you don't actually talk to anyone, is it a meetup or could you just watch this on a live stream? And so it is so much fun right now. It's fucking hard, but it's allegedly so much fun to think about inventing. We're now at this point with the strength of with machine learning. I sat in a presentation today that our machine learning team found a way to basically, this is amazing, cut 40% of the emails we send of the number 2 kind of email we send. Actually, number 1 kind of email we send. We can send 40% less to make your inbox less, crap filled, and get the same number of RSVPs. But then take it further is to say, there is my point about the 10 somewhere between 6 and 15 people is that we have to design for meetups that are that book club, that 10-person book club, as well as the 200-person meetup like this. And so we think in terms of essentially there's 4 different layouts of a people map of a meetup. There's the people sitting in rows and looking at people who are pretending to be smart. And then there's the people in a circle, and then there's the sort of cocktail style type thing, and then there's the mass of the activity type meetups, the hikes, and by the way, none of those 4 are pretty equally distributed across all the 15,000 meetups that happen every day. So
Online social networks, Scott, have an advantage because the interactivity is purely online and digital can be easily measured. You mentioned how you leverage data when trying to optimize for that perfect interface on a meetup. How do you even measure those offline behaviors? Attendance is one that we talked about before we got up here.
Right. So we we pay close attention to the show up rate, which let me back up for a second. As a mission driven company, and I don't just sort of throw that around. We have this core value of the company exists because we're trying to have impact on lives. If you showed up at this meetup and in some way this meetup has absolutely no impact on your life. You didn't learn anything. You didn't meet anyone. It just was and not even just was it a bad experience, but was it an actual positive impact on your life? We want to optimize for maximum positive impact. The proxy for that is did you actually show up versus RSVPing and not, and then the proxy on that is did you RSVP. We want to move further down the stack to, so right now we don't have an accurate measurement of how many people actually show up. We only know whether you RSVP'd, but we're pretty close to actually measuring show up, and then doing so that you can do tests, so that you can do experiments and tests and experiments and tests. What if you tell an organizer, take the organizers in New Zealand and give them different kinds of tips and instructions and productize different things so that they can set up a meetup so that people talk to each other more. Or we can actually buzz the people's phones so that they say, hey, why don't you meet this person because you went to the same school or whatever. And so to be able to experiment on this level, but to optimize for what? That's the question, all of you in your various jobs, I'm sure, like, there's whether it's implicit or not, or explicit or not, it's what are you optimizing for? And of course there's revenue and things of that sort, but we want to be one of the world's, we just want to be a company that is getting to a point where we might ask you to, 2-3 months down the line, like, hey, you're a member of UX+Data. Not just did it have a good experience, that's the point. Not just did
you meet someone? Did you learn something?
Has it impacted
valuable?
your life? Has it impacted your life?
So-
And so we want, by the way, we want, when you're looking for UX or data meetups in New York, the meetups that are really delivering somehow on like, oh, people are really getting jobs at that one. People are really learning stuff at that one. People are really meeting, friends at that one. That kind of like what the better Airbnb to stay at is, like that it's that the data is powering, like really it's optimizing the whole system around the right metrics.
But I want to drill down. I want to come back to the user experience, because you talked about how machine learning can inform your delivery of emails, or machine learning could inform how you present your product. But I'm still curious why you couldn't use machine learning to have a dialogue with a organizer to say, for your meetup, which is 10 people, this is the format. These are the types of questions you should encourage. Like, I'm still curious why, if the business is evolving into this place where you want people to leave, you've changed my life, why, I appreciate the need to collect data, but why the involvement with the organizers isn't the principal point of entry for that?
It should. It's a great question, and we actually have the narrative, the arc of our history as a company is that we started out not having organizers at all, which is an interesting story of, well, how did Meetup work if there were no organizers? I'll tell you that sometime if you want. But to then being like, oh, we saw ourselves as we are empowering the organizers. And then what we realized is that, and then there was a period of years where we said, oh, wait a minute, does, when Amazon lets bad reviews of a book be on, are they optimizing for the publisher, or are they optimizing for the customer? The customer centric is to say, hey, we're going to let bad reviews happen. It's a long way of saying, like, we said, no, we're not here to serve the organizer, even though the organizers are any great experience is because the organizer is great. We are more in, like, right now we're in a moment where we're putting organizers first, and that's what I meant by I said, like, we have this incredible playground of invention ahead of us, because we're realizing that to help, to use this big network to be able to, like, if there's 15,000 meetups a day happening, and and you can tell which ones are crap and which ones are great, and you can thus empower a person to bring people together, empower an organizer, empower a host to bring people together, because you just know that there are best practices and there are ways to do things. Again, whether it's a 6-person meetup, different than a 60-person meetup, a hiking meetup is different than a career-oriented tech meetup, so that's what we're doing, and we're focused on it.
One more question on user design, and then maybe we can turn to WeWork. Jeremy told me about a word that I was not familiar with before this meeting, skeuomorphism. Right. Do I have that right? Do you know that word?
Yeah.
Does everyone here know that word? So as I understand it, skeuomorphism refers to this in the design context, is trying to take design and have it replicate real life experiences. So you think of in a Windows experience, your desktop, you think of a folder and files. And I'm wondering what the role is, or how you're able to interpret the offline as a mechanism for how you should organize the online. And then maybe even the inversion of that, whether You're offline, you're trying to mirror your offline navigational experience. I'm really fixated on this topic of organizing. Maybe I should be a Meetup organizer.
You should.
But I'm trying. I'd love to hear your perspective on user experience and it replicating the real world.
That's really interesting. Can go down different avenues here, but I think perhaps the most useful thing for everyone here might be to it really relates to I think I find that designers and product people in our industry can often get too obsessed with the mechanics of what's in our industry and not just obsess over the basic questions of making something easier. So, and by that I mean, well, I guess let me put it this way. In the web era, you would hire web designers and they would build web pages. And then we went into the mobile era, and so you hire people who are really talented people, who are app makers, but their answer to problems is what's the app view like? What's the app design like? I think to really excel in perhaps your career in this work is to center on what is the this might sound so banal and basic and obvious and perhaps even unrelated to your question, but to me they're totally linked, which is just to say, what's the real world impact you want? In our case at Meetup, we're embarking on this crazy ass vision for what we want to build over the next few years, essentially stripping away the question of what should the app look like, and instead it's what do you want, like what's the real world experience, and to approach that with a zero base. And what that means specifically, for example, with us, without revealing too much, is basically like this. If both Meetup and Facebook, we're like, there's this notion of a group and an event, and you start a group and you schedule an event. But what if you killed the start a group button and you killed the schedule of an event button, and instead, let me give you an example. In New York City, there's nearly 1.5 million members of Meetup. In the past 12 months, I'm making up specific numbers, but let's say 20,000 people said, I want a running Meetup. I want a running Meetup. Actually, no, wait, you know what? Yeah, okay, I want a running Meetup. We don't, and then for those who know how Meetup works, then what happens? Someone yell it out. Then what happens? How does Meetup work? It's basically waits for, anyone want to jump in? Yeah, it waits for someone in New York City. Basically then when someone starts a running Meetup in New York City, it alerts all the people in New York City who are waiting for running Meetups that, look, Matt started a men's Staten Island running Meetup for Sunday mornings at 6 a.m. And to most of you, you're like, I don't live in Staten Island. I don't want to run at 6 a.m. I don't want a men's only running Meetup, whatever. And so the sort of skeuomorphic, the question of what are the parallels to real world activity, real world, the way people actually, it's not folders or trash cans, but the point is, if 20,000 people have signed up for running Meetups in the past 12 months, shouldn't we be finding which ones want a women's only running Meetup on weeknights at 9 p.m. and making sure, near Prospect Park, and making sure they find each other, and perhaps not waiting for someone to press the start button or the schedule button? And this is also the part of the answer to the machine learning question, which is, what is it that humans can do, like care and be creative? But to start a running Meetup for, let's say, women who want to run at 9 p.m. because running as a pack of women is safer, and you run faster and stronger as a pack. Why can't machines start that Meetup, and then people can bring the caring and the creativity to it? There's just, we are.
Does that mean you're putting these people out of work if machines are making those decisions about intent, about how the interface should work?
Well, the point, you didn't hear me say anything about like what are the app screens. The point is, and I think I know that you're intrigued by live person. I mean that notion of actually, is this even on? Do you care about like UI?
Well, that's the meetup, right?
Oh, right, yeah. No, UX. That's
the live person article that you're referencing. I don't know how many of you are familiar with live person. Live person operates, I think, the largest chat platform for support. So when you go to American Airlines, that's their platform. And the CEO recently said he thought that websites would eventually be a thing of yesterday, and they would be replaced essentially by a chat box with AI, and so that the system could divine your intent, and you would no longer need to do any navigation, thereby putting all of the UI and maybe even the UX people out of work. And this is why this is the last meetup for this group.
No, it's not. I mean, listen. There's the 2016 bot hype, but the beyond the hype, I believe there's a truth here. The truth is that for old people like me who've been in the industry, where you think that the UI models are set or the various models are set, and then things get blown up. I do believe that the design of call it conversational UXs, UIs, and it isn't just like voice and Alexa, and it isn't necessarily just bots and messaging, but basically the idea here is like if you're seamless and you see that I order at the same time many nights, why don't you please just when I'm way too hungry,
send me the food?
Why aren't you messaging me a little bit before and saying like, hey, so if you want food, here's 3 choices, or pick whatever you want. But like that notion of the like client server, I'm going to the web page. I mean, listen, this is 2018. We know the power of notifications and how essential that is. But it's
hey fatso, this is your drinking night. Would you like pizza?
Yeah.
The future.
Scott, let's transition a bit and talk a little about the WeWork acquisition, which is so interesting because both Meetup and WeWork are really at the intersection of technology and the real world. Mm-hmm. WeWork has been on an acquisition tear. They've acquired Flatiron School, Conductor. They've acquired companies that make construction software. I read online today they invested in a company that makes wave pools. Can you tell us what's going on? What's the thought around Meetup and WeWork?
Well, it's so cool. I mean, it's basically we have community that needs space, and they have space that needs community. So the number one problem of my customers, we got 250,000 people, 250,000 meetup organizers. Actually, it's interesting. We got 250,000 meetup organizers. They pay $12 a month, and their top problem, one of their top problems, if not their top problem, is where do you have your meetup? And even like it's great that thanks to the host of this space, but it's a real issue. It's a real problem. It's a real blocker to growth and success. And again, designing for the full online-offline experience. And then WeWork has is opening like 1 million square feet of real estate every month. Imagine that. You know what a WeWork building is like, 50, 70,000 square feet. There's like 2 to 4 of those opening up every week in, week out around the world. And they're these like beautiful spaces for community, and their line of saying like we're not a real estate company, we're a community company is something I thought was bullshit, but is quite but is real. But it's real, and
it's a good thing this isn't being recorded.
Yeah, it's real, and so there's this dream of of what are the 21st century commons? What are the, in previous centuries you had churches and synagogues and mosques and mason halls and basically these like network spaces. We know what network computers are. We know what network phones are. We know what network people are. This guy invented network people. But what does it mean to have network space where it's built to be welcoming and built to have but at the end of the day, I mean, who here works at a WeWork? So a bunch of you. So it's a simple vision. The vision is that every WeWork around the world, at different hours of the day should be brimming with life, with those book clubs, those language meetups, those health support meetups, all the meetups that need great space and bring a space to life, and it made a lot of sense.
Well, how are meetups going to change now that there's a physical space that you can now control? WeWork, that I learned, has this notion of what they call spatial analytics. They monitor how many people are actually using a conference room, and they use that data then to inform design decisions around the space. How does the fact that you may now actually have the ability to measure what goes on inside a meetup impact how meetups are going to change in the future?
It goes hand in hand with it goes hand in hand with what we're trying to get at, which is to learn more than ever has been learned before about how do you really bring people together to create community and opportunity. So But does
that mean like you can now collect data that allows you to inform what are better meetups quantitatively in terms of attendance, in terms of participation, layout, three people in front of the audience versus round table? Like, are there angles here where you can really, I'm trying to bring this back to the data aspect of this group, how you can leverage that?
Well, yeah, and so you're referring to, WeWork has a spatial data group, which is literally, which is, they're trying to do things that have never been done before, which is be really, really smart about how do you design space, not just for whatever an office might typically be optimizing for, but they want to optimize for community, in addition to the comfort and the other things that are important for a place to work. But again, the idea here is like, think of WeWork spaces in the future as real towns, commons, real community space that isn't just a workspace. And so, I'll give you at least a sentence on your actual question. The answer is, sorry, one last sentence on what WeWork's doing and then how we play into it on that level. Before I did the WeWork deal, I have one of my best friends, good friend. She's a kind of a top architect in the city, and I very covertly said, "Hey, what do you think of WeWork?" And she said, "Oh, it's like Google from 10 years ago. All the best engineers wanted to work at Google, or 20 years ago, whatever it was. Today, coming out of school, all the best architects want to work at WeWork. They have the pick of the litter, cream of the crop of all the architects, because where else do you get to work where not only can you get to launch your ideas left and right, because they're building out 1 million square feet a month, but also they're actually doing what people have maybe talked about, but really using data to optimize and learn and make something better." As for how that relates to is someone tracking people's movements at a meetup that's happening at a WeWork right now? No, and that's not the plan. But we are learning about what it means. We hope to learn more and more about what it means to have. This might sound subtle, but this is huge. What does it mean to have 10 meetups on one floor at the same time? Not just do people bump into each other and say, "Hey, you're with the French language meetup," and "Hey, you're with the feminist book club," or whatever, and they should sort of collaborate or something. But it's really about the feeling in the room, the frequencies, I'm going to go like very woo-woo on you here. It's like there's something about, again, I'm in the physical IRL community business, and so you think about, you've all been in spaces that make you feel warmer, that are more welcoming, that are more inclusive, that are more something, that bring out your best self, that make you can be your friendliest self in this context, and then you're kind of a jerk in that other context, like, if you and so the idea of designing for and seeing what happens when you can have a level of aliveness and thriving of a space. This is this is not just some I promise I'll shut up in 1 second. This isn't like some oh, isn't that cute, Meetup has some meetups going on, and that's like a little part of life, and it's like a little added bonus. This is actually this is heart and soul stuff. If people literally feel less alone, if you find yourself that you want to learn something or do something, or you want to be involved in something, or you want to like change your career, or you're diagnosed with something, or whatever it is, to be able to have access, to be able to meet up within miles, within days, within hours, within blocks, and be able to find people who will in a welcoming, open feeling, where the spirit of this room, I bet, right, the spirit of this room is, how many of you there's something in you that says like you'd love to be able to help out or mentor or be of use to other people in this room right now. I mean, I appreciate maybe some of you raised your hand. You're like, what? I don't know what the fuck he's talking about, but it really matters. It's a question. This is a question of. The question of is, we are at a fork in the road of society. Either as there is a literal fork in the road of society. Either with the disparity and the dysfunction and the division and the coarseness and the inequalities and the anger and all the tough stuff in the world, it seems to be only getting worse, right? Like, so as it gets harder and more of a struggle, and I'm talking about Me Too, and I'm talking about Black Lives Matter, and I'm talking about guns, and I'm talking about climate change, and I'm talking about all this stuff that's going. Where's the world headed? It's as oversimplistic, but either we head towards like, you know what, this is too heavy. I want diversions. I'm just gonna retreat to Netflix. Or out of the desperation, you say, God, I really need other people. I mean, I'm desperate. I want to advance my career. Okay, I can watch some YouTube videos and do this or that, but people are going to help each other. Either they're going to turn on each other or turn to each other. Either we're just going to basically just break down as a society, or there's going to be a kind of coming together. Not because people are philanthropic or they're feeling like they need to do good or something, but just out of selfish how do we operate? So anyway. Data, UX.
No, but ScottHeiferman 2020. One of the things I genuinely love about you, and I love about startups, is this meetup is about data. And one of the questions that we might have asked was WeWork's acquisition of Meetup to reduce churn? Did they think about this from a numeric perspective about how they could optimize revenue? But you talk so aspirationally, and it's a pleasure. This is my own editorializing, but one of the things that's a pleasure in startups is those moments when you don't have to think about data, is those moments when you do think aspirationally, you think in terms of change the world, and it's almost at odds with this idea of, do I measure data? So from WeWork's perspective, do I measure data, or do I hire this crazy guy, ScottHeiferman, to take us in directions we never imagined? And it's amazing that after the acquisition, you were as future-focused and aspirational as you were when you started.
Well, that's the only reason why I did the deal, because the deal would be a failure if I'm not. The deal to me will be a failure if I'm not still leading Meetup 5-10 years from now and like trying to bring our vision to life. The reason why I did the deal was because we were doing great. We've been profitable and like we didn't need to do any deal, but Trump happens and other things happen, and you find yourself not getting any younger, and you're like, I want to have impact on the world, and I want to do my part to like make the world not fall apart. And so here comes like this rocket ship of WeWork, and as like Sheryl Sandberg says, like sometimes you just get on the rocket ship.
And it's a bigger platform. Jeremy's got one more question, and then we're going to go to Q&A.
Scott, something you mentioned earlier made me think about this, and I found a quote from you from 2013. You said, what's on the screen is only going to get more interesting and more interesting and more interesting, but there's something about face-to-face too. And so it's not that one is good and one is bad, but in light of something from a face-to-face, and it's not that one is good and one is bad, but we do get something from face-to-face that can't be replicated on a screen. Do you still believe that online social networks or offline social networks are equal good and bad in light of recent events, Cambridge Analytica, Facebook, your impassioned speech a second ago?
Yeah. No.
Fair enough.
Scott, out. Well, do you want to elaborate?
I believe I'm like giving too long answers, so I thought I would help you out.
I would agree.
Yeah. No, listen, it's so easy to just kind of do the simple online bad, offline good. We got to live in the real world, and I love my my various forms of online digital community, and how whether that's a group text chat that lasts for years with your friends or whatever. But yeah, I know we do believe that basic thesis. If in person will create stronger relationships and a stronger sense of community, and so that's our plan.
Lauren, do we have time for another question or Q&A? All right, Scott, one last one then. Mark Zuckerberg recently said that online communities...
Wait, who is this?
Have you heard of this guy? Said that Facebook's new mission is to give people the power to build community and bring the world closer together. That sounds a lot like your mission.
Yes.
Care to elaborate?
What's the question?
What do you think of Facebook?
That's a shot across your bow, right? They're coming right after you.
They're hopefully they'll create lots of real community, and so will we. And they also got an ad business to support. They've also got a pretty big investment in VR to have happen. I think that we're gonna and they might help, kind of raise the awareness in the world of the importance of offline community too. But I don't know. They've got a lot on their hands, and we are focused and get to invent like hell with a kind of our lean team. I don't know. Anyone have a more specific question on that?
Or we can open it up to questions for everyone now.
Please wait for the mic before you ask your question.
Aaron Price. For those of you who don't know Aaron, he's exceedingly shy.
That's why I wear these pants. First of all, thank you, Scott. I run the New Jersey Tech Meetup, if any of you have ever been, and I owe a huge amount of my career now, and it's inspired the Propellify Innovation Festival, which is a 10,000 person gathering, so thank you for empowering us to do that. You touched on some things in a lot of that really drove this question, which is, meetups are often built around commonalities and groups. You even used in your example, I don't want to go running with people who are, men in Staten Island on Sunday at 6. I want to go with just maybe, just women around here who are more like me. But that paired with the social issue around the era of Trump that we live in now, how do you balance avoiding an issue where you're just like feeding the machine of I just want to find sameness, and I just want to continue the narrative of the same white men who think like me who want to run in Staten Island every Sunday, versus like adding a broader, like opening up people's minds to the vision that I know that you have for the impact Meetup can make, especially tied with machine learning. When you again said, sorry to just tell on here, like, oh, I see you went to the same school that I did, we should meet, like, yeah, more sameness together. How do you make it more diverse?
So maybe I should. I'm glad you're asking that, because I get to talk about something that I think might be really interesting to this group if I understand who you are. Is that the number one thing, the number one cause for Meetup's success, the thing that defines how Meetup has grown, is something we call cell dividing and spawning. This phenomenon of someone starts one New Jersey tech meetup, and then out of that, people realize it sort of cell divides and spawns into probably, since you started it, probably hundreds of different New Jersey tech meetups. There's the women's New Jersey tech meetup, and then there's the women's coders New Jersey meetup, and then there's the like newbie women's New Jersey tech meetup, and then there's the like Northern Jersey newbie women's, and this is a natural organic process.
You're totally irrelevant.
But this is a natural and organic process, and it does. The question is how can you accelerate that process by using data to basically reveal, not wait for someone to start. If we know that 40 women are going to a certain meetup in New Jersey, and they're driving 30 miles to it, why don't we tell those 40? Why don't we actually sort of serve it up that those women can meet up on their own, and then attract all other people who are local? I realize I'm.
But part of, I think, what he's asking is you have the ability, same way that Sinclair Media has this huge ability to influence people with their network, to educate people. So you have I think part of what Aaron's asking is you have the ability to tell people you should be more well-rounded. You are exclusively focused on books, and maybe a language program would be interesting. Do you view that as part of your mission to round people out?
Well, I mean, it's no, not explicitly. Our job is to help people connect with people around the things that we're not trying to be prescriptive.
But
like that.
you talked about how Steve Jobs famously doesn't believe in focus groups, and people don't always know what they want. I think part of it is can you anticipate what people want by exposing them to new groups without waiting for them simply to?
Yeah, that happens every day, and we're proud of that. And I guess that is a good it's a good question of how can you expose people. This is part of what I was saying about the emphasis on the reputation systems and being able to surface the great meetups from the not so great meetups, because then it empowers us as a platform to then promote great meetups to you, or put it in front of your face somehow. Even if you may not be directly interested, but we can confidently say that this is a high quality meetup. But I don't know. We've got our work cut out for us to just much better serve people and organizers around that basic model of helping you do what you want to do. That being said, our last word on that is that we. What we do see, and again, I'm talking about Meetup a lot. I hope this is relevant to people listening and that are here about how to apply this kind of principle in your work. But our job is to make things happen in the world that wouldn't happen otherwise. In other words, there was a guy on my board, Tony Hsieh, where I'd joke Tony Hsieh from Zappos, that if Zappos went out of business, people wouldn't go barefoot. The question is like they would find their shoes somehow, some other way. And so the question is, are you in your work making something happen in the world that wouldn't happen otherwise. If Meetup shut down tomorrow, there'd be literally people wouldn't meet up. The world would still continue to meet up. People wouldn't just go into their caves and not come out. But the point is that we can point to how we're sparking meetups. We're not only just through data, through basically we know that you, Aaron, have sparked hundreds. Well, I don't know about hundreds, at least dozens of other meetups in your area, and people who wouldn't have necessarily started a community before, and as a result, people are helping each other and supporting each other and collaborating and communicating and forming a community, and good things are happening. And so, again, it's that point of, are you making something happen that wouldn't happen otherwise, or are you just kind of providing, a tool to just, augment something that would otherwise happen?
We have a question back here.
Hi, Scott. My name's Mike. I appreciated your grand vision for humanity. I thought that was great, so thanks for that. I wanted to get your take on VR and AR. I know you mentioned it really briefly, but how does that affect Meetup and going forward? Because it's kind of a digital space, but also it feels it's an online space, but it kind of feels offline. So what is your take on that?
We'll let Facebook do that. And I don't mean to be dismissive, but we feel. I mean, sure, certainly there's however AR will evolve, I think will be really interesting and potentially relevant to Meetup. But I think it's important in all of our work to just know who you are, know who we are as a in your respective organizations and companies, and know what to say no to, and know that there's an incredible opportunity to invent on the vector that you want to be great at. And so. For us, as long as people are living, on Earth and in real space, we want to get really, really good. I mean, what's crazy is that we've been hacking at this for 16 years, and now the overnight success takes a while. Only now, even before WeWork, we're adding 1 million new members every month without any advertising, and. 1 million people every 6 weeks. And what's my point? My point is that to really crack the code on something, just like Andrew thought he cracked the code on social networking 20 years ago, there's so much more innovation to do on just one thing. I realize you might be involved in AR or VR, and I wish I had some some insight or something helpful for you, but I'm not thinking about it. Okay.
Who else? Stina?
Hi. This is also a thank you because I moved to New York and knew 0 people intentionally, and Meetup has sparked so many parts of my journey, and I just feel like as a product person, it's probably nice to hear that. You did change my life. So it's working. But my question is, I have heard so often from people who have worked at Meetup or in just talking to you, the story of how Meetup started, which I think is really cool because a lot of times when a product starts, it kind of just, you never really, that tribal awareness doesn't stay. So how have you used maybe data to inform or kept that meetupness, if you will, of who you look for in people, and how have you stayed true to that mission and passion and growing at such a huge rate?
In people that we hire?
Yeah, or just or that sense of culture, because you've scaled and you've done a lot, and have you used data to help that journey, or what has been kind of helped that, if it hasn't been
I'm trying to think about how do we use data amongst a 200-person team that we're hiring, and by the way, we normally hire 4 to 5 people a month, and in March we hired 30 people. We're doubling the size of the company over the next 18 months. So hiring is, but I think you know what? I don't have a good answer on how we really use data. We are very, we take very seriously there's something. I really feel like I started the company a decade more too early. It's imagine starting Airbnb 10 years too early, or where it's like the culture wasn't ready, the world wasn't ready, technology wasn't ready, everything wasn't ready. And so what's crazy is that, we hire people now, and we ask everyone to kind of stand up in front of the company and say, why is what we're doing important to you? And I'm telling you, and we've been doing that for forever. And like the people we're hiring have like the more outstanding, heartfelt answers to why what we're doing is important to them than ever before, which is phenomenal. Because you would think that as you grow, it's sort of that. I guess this is the point of your question. The sort of mission dissipates from a data. I'm really curious about your question about how data plays a role. I'm going to think about that one. Anyone have suggestions on that?
Yep.
Suggestion on that or a different question? Okay, then get a mic.
Okay, wow, it's loud. So my question is about if all of your companies were successful, or did you have any failures earlier? And then the other question is, did you always have this vision for Meetup from the beginning, or did you have some doubts about it where it's like, this is just a website with a couple of groups on it? Or was it always tied to that like strong belief?
Well, I really didn't. We didn't start thinking that like the sort of grandness of vision, but it's always the basic idea was the basic idea. What you realize is that while this woman used it for when she's new in town, the reality is that we're serving a universal human need. That there's that we just paid attention, kept our eyes and ears and hearts and minds open to seeing what people were really using with the platform, and realized that, hey, this is people often say like, wow, what do why you're still doing Meetup? And am I I got nothing better to do. I can't and there's no I don't have a better thing to work on. So
let's do 2 more questions. Yes, in the back. We need a mic.
Hey, we got a question.
Oh, one question here.
Hi, my name's Richard. I just want to say thank you for Meetup. I use it quite often for our own e-commerce meetups in the city, and I use it myself to meet other New Yorkers who have the same interests. From a UX design background, I just want to ask a question. I know Meetup went through a reskin, redesign, and look, I was lucky enough to be invited to kind of check it out beforehand, before it went live.
Why didn't you warn us?
Yeah, I just want to ask about what was the response, and like how long was the design process? What are you seeing from users? Thank you.
Thanks. Yeah. So we've been around the block, and we know that people don't like change, and you gotta be thick-skinned sometimes, and you gotta but we made some mistakes on this one. And so we've been beaten up hard, just like Snap has, just like people said that the news feed was the worst thing, was gonna kill Facebook, back in the day. So we thought we did a pretty arduous process of getting the right feedback ahead of time. We were really good team, kind of running a process, but I think we made some key mistakes, and we're busting our ass to fix them. I know many of you probably don't know what I'm actually. How many of you have any idea what I'm talking about? Just a few. Okay, good. Yeah. So I probably didn't answer your question fully enough, but should I take more time or no?
No, I think you hit it. Do you feel? Okay. We got time for one more. Okay.
Hi. So you've talked a lot about kind of creating these great meetups and that connect people and where people learn. And I would just, especially in the context of talking about data, what are the metrics of success for you other than attendance?
So what's really interesting. Well, one way to answer that is, there's revenue. But we think of this basic. There's a basic funnel of where, as you go down the funnel, there's the sense of going from being a registered member to being an organizer. But what we really care about more than ever now, and it's a big wake-up call for us, is if you want quality, you have to measure it. And the old kind of maxim of what gets measured gets done is, so for us, we just like in any industry, any business, any world, you have to pay meticulous attention to this real crazy adventure of unlocking the keys to success and the keys to making a platform or an ecosystem work. In our case, we know that if an organizer does things that makes their members feel welcome, that they're going to have a more successful community. And so then how can we productize that? We know, and then we also, it's kind of exciting we do experiments and tests where there's an array of metrics that you might try to be doing something that increases RSVPs and be hurting some other metric, and in the past you might just sort of be not paying attention to the byproducts of this thing being successful on that, but it's hurting this other thing. Now to sort of more as a more just build the system so that you can pay attention to an array of core metrics. But it's I want to emphasize again, and just to summarize it, is that it's a challenge to all of you in your work, is if there's any part of your work which is having actual impact on people's lives, how can you build systems? How could you actually optimize for that? I think that's the future.
Scott, thank you very much for participating tonight.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you so much to Jeremy, to Andrew, and to Scott for being here tonight and giving us a fantastic talk. Thank you also again to Lauren for helping us to organize this. And thank you to our volunteers who helped to check you in and greeted you and helped to keep the event running smoothly. Our next event will be here on May 1st, and we will also be having a bonus event in Brooklyn on May 15th. So mark your calendars and watch out for that, for those events to be posted soon. Please stay for a little while longer and meet somebody new, eat some food if there's some food left, and we'll see you at the next event. So enjoy.